especially all the taxpayers in the room. It seems like that's all we've been seeing on the news lately. I can't get away from it. Listen to the news and everyone's talking about the tax cuts. What's going to happen? Are they going to expire? Are we going to extend the tax cuts? What are we going to do? A lot of us are really concerned because as individuals, it's going to tell us how much money we're going to get to keep at the end of our paycheck after the government takes their cut. Corporations are starting to wonder how this is going to affect hiring decisions because it's probably one of their biggest expenses. I bet a lot of you, like myself, have had situations where you get into a discussion with family members about taxes. And all I can tell you is I've gotten a few of those discussions, and they can get kind of ugly. That's what I wanted to talk about today. This feature is called A Tale of Two Tax Myths. There's two things that I really want to hit on. Number one, I'm going to talk about our tax cuts only for the rich and they don't help the poor. And the other myth I'm going to talk about is the best way to increase tax revenues is to increase taxes. First, I want to give a little background on our tax structure in the United States. First of all, we have a progressive structure, which means, in its simplest terms, the more money you make, the more taxes that you're going to pay. And you can see these are the different tax brackets for the year 2010. You can see you get up to 35% once you get over $374,000. I'm just going to go over a quick example of somebody who has a taxable income of $100,000 and how that affects how much taxes they're going to pay. 10% is their first $16,750, goes up to 15%, and then it goes to 25% after $68,000. Somebody making $100,000 in taxable income is going to pay about $17,363, but that's their effective tax rate. Number one myth, tax cuts are only for the rich. Tax cuts don't help the poor. That's the myth. That's what I hear a lot of times. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through two examples. I'm going to take somebody that's a lower income earner at $20,000, and I'm going to contrast that with somebody who has a taxable income of $100,000. And I wanted to show in the year 2000, and I also have a comparison in 2003. 2003 represents the Bush tax cuts. The reason I chose that year is because that's what I always heard is Bush only cut taxes on the rich, and it's not helping the poor. Well, let me show you the facts. First of all, we have somebody making $20,000 taxable income, and we got our second person making $100,000. That person making $20,000 under the Clinton plan paid $3,000 in taxes. Under the Bush plan, in 2003, they paid $2,300. They actually paid less under the Bush plan. Person making $100,000, obviously they're paying a lot more in taxes, $22,300, and under the Bush plan, $18,620. So you can see somebody who's making a lot of money got a tax cut, but somebody who's only making $20,000 received a tax break under the Bush plan. What's interesting, if we look at the percentages, the person making $20,000 actually had a greater percentage increase in the taxes that they had to pay. Here's another statistic a lot of people, I think, find confusing. I took this statistic in the year 2001. I'm going to show you who actually pays the federal taxes. Top 5% of all wage earners in 2001, they paid 54% of all taxes. Top 10% of all wage earners, they pay 65% of all taxes. And as you can see, the top 50% of all wage earners, they pay all the taxes, 96%. So when somebody's saying, hey, those rich people are getting a tax cut, they're the ones paying all the taxes. I mean, top 10%, 65%. they're the ones that deserve the tax cut. They are getting hit with the biggest tax burden. Myth number 2, and we're hearing this a lot right now. What are we going to do about that deficit? We don't have enough tax revenue. Well, let's raise taxes. Let's raise taxes on the rich people. I'm going to show you actually that that's a myth. That's where I'm going to introduce Reaganomics. Ronald Reagan introduced the policy coined Reaganomics, which was all about lowering taxes and reducing government regulation. This shows our top tax brackets through the years from 1910 to 2010. Carter, the top tax rate was 70%. When Reagan came in, he lowered that all the way down to 28%. Just imagine if you were working and you had your top tax bracket was 70% and the government got to keep 70% of all the money you earned. This actually had some of the biggest economic implications in the past 25 years. What this resulted in was an actual tax revenue had grown from $500 billion to $1 trillion. They think it would be the opposite, but this encourages people to produce. When people pay less taxes, it encourages production. Look it up here, the 50s, 90%. Ronald Reagan was an actor at that time. He was paying 90% in taxes. He got to keep 10 cents out of every dollar. He was encouraged to lower taxes because he knew it was going to cause people to produce. This is in 2003, the Bush tax cuts. Revenues actually doubled capital gains and encouraged investment. People invested in corporations. They were able to hire people. People got wealthier with their taxes going up. Reducing taxes increases revenues to the government. This is a Ronald Reagan quote I'll close with. Next time you're sitting around the table, you're talking with somebody, your family, make sure that they know the 2 tax myths and arm yourself with the facts so you can have a healthy debate. This is Toastmaster.